Efendim iyi akşamlar diliyorum. Günün son oturumu.
Welcome to the last session of today. I have very valuable speakers with me, and I also would like to thank the Turkish Union of Capital Markets. And we have started making this hybrid conference. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to at least be in such a format. I would like to thank all the contributors and all the presenters, and I would like to give the floor to Mr. Tamer Saka. And also another presenter is İlhami Koç from the Association of Listed Companies Executives, Vice Chairman. Mr. Yaşar Bahçeci, Turkish Association of Appraisers, and Mr. İlhami Koç, Kotader, Board of Managers, CEO. Thank you very much for being here. The last session is always a little bit more tiresome. And we wanted to learn about your distinguished companies. And we would like to learn a little bit more about your triggering roles within the financial sector. And as a professional, I'm almost 50 years old. We have been actually supported by these NGOs for a long period of time, because it's very much for us to learn about the CEOs and all the SMEs and also their contribution. And you have the opportunity to learn about these companies and these enterprises and their experience. So we have very valuable examples of the SMEs amongst us. So I think that the SMEs do have a very important contribution to the government and to the state. Whenever there is a new implementation and application, the NGOs come together and also the SMEs come together, and they make the necessary debates about it, and they give a consolidated point of view, and they have a very important service about this. And on the other hand, the NGOs, on the other hand, have created a great amount of a synergy in between them. And that experience and that knowledge has to be actually widespread. And I suppose that the public opinion is very well actually responding to this. And I believe that there is a great process that is ongoing on together with them. And starting up with Mr. Tamer, who is actually, it's so that this negotiation can go in a more fruitful manner. What do you think that should be done? Well, thank you very much. Definitely the NGOs are very much important for democracies. They are very important to dwell upon the problems, the challenges of the field. And it is also very much important to convey these challenges to the decision givers. And in Turkey, the NGOs on the other side, approximately in the last 20 or 30 years, have been very effectively been working, and they have been making very important studies and jobs as for professional unions and also as for professional occupations. Of course, the decision makers and those who are creating the legislation do have to understand the situation in the field, because the laws, while making the laws, the analysis have to be made in a critical manner. If not, then some certain regulations can create some imbalances in the field if not understood correctly. That is the reason why it's very much important to negotiate and to debate upon it. And this negotiation mechanism is widely been implemented in Turkey, in our country. And as for that, we are also making a lot of contribution as the Corporate Governance Association of Turkey in the areas where we are related to. And we are also bringing up our common views, and we are also sharing the expectations of our members. And I can say as a proposal here, these mechanisms have to be working in a more systematical manner. And in some aspects, in some certain regulations, groups have to be determined about relevant fields. I suppose that has to be precisely understood. Not every time do we get the news about some certain related issues for the relevant parties, and that is the reason why in times when it's necessary, of course, it's very much important that these relevant parties have to learn about the amendments in the laws. Digitalization can be used in that manner, and the groups can be well defined, and which NGOs should be related with which subject should be actually precisely determined. And it's very much important to share knowledge through the digital platforms. And I suppose the infrastructure is already ready for that. Thank you very much for this comprehensive response. And yes, sir. And you, Mr. Bacici, have been party in very different fields as a Turkish Association of Appraisers. I would like to greet you all, and I also would like to thank the whole team who has been paying their efforts for this. And let me just give you information about the Turkish Association of Appraisers. Why have it been founded? On 2001, of course, within the needs of the capital markets, with the visions and with the estimations, we have founded the Turkish Association of Appraisers. It has a history of 20 years. Of course, the development is still ongoing, but we have taken a very important steps so far, but we have still areas of development indeed. But I always say that it's actually the insurance. What we do is the insurance of the finances of our markets, because in order that we evaluate the financial areas, we are making a very important work here. With the status that has been taken, we have been actually accepted by the official Gazette on 2020, and we have many members, and we are a very important NGOs. But in the end of the day, of course, the NGOs, and as from the starting point of the NGOs until so far, I believe that our association has a great deal of a job, because we're talking about the negotiations, sharing knowledge and information, and in order to actually meet the needs, etc., and to catch the developments. Should be understood by the sector properly, and you have to prepare yourself accordingly to this. And that's the reason why we have a very important mission in that case. And our country indeed is a very strong country. Rather than the state mechanisms, the power of the state mechanisms, I believe that the NGOs do have a very strong power here. Like all the NGOs in their fields of expertise and in implementing their works, like there are different types of areas of disciplines in many NGOs, as maybe sometimes we have also some certain competences as actually making rules and regulations. So NGOs in that manner have to be very active, and such forums and meetings, I believe, we can have the opportunity to develop our negotiation, because not only our own field of expertise, but also we have to be in contact with our stakeholders, actually. And what an NGO has to do as a basis is exactly this, and we have to do it in the most accurate way. So that is the reason why the basis of NGOs has first been started with the AHI organizations in the past. The artisans, the craftsmen, the commercial people have come up together, and it was actually an NGO movement as well. Not only with the rules that the state is determining, there are also some certain mechanisms that we're working accordingly to, which our ancestors have been created in the past many, many years ago. So in that case, we are really very strong in as a history when we think about the NGOs. Of course, we have to develop it accordingly to the spirit of the time of the period that we live in. So that is the reason why there are plenty of steps to be taken. The world is developing very fast. We are now in the verge of, we are now in the epoch of communication, and everybody has to develop their own systems properly. And it's very much valuable for each system, and nobody is independent from the other. The financial sector, the appraisers sector, every partite is interdependent, and that's the reason why we all have very important missions to undertake. And we, as the Turkish Association of Appraisers, definitely have to be together in these platforms of negotiation to coordinate the NGOs and our members accordingly to this.
Güzel bir örneği de sol tarafında oturuyor.
Thank you very much. Actually, I got a great message from your topic, and the message deliverers maybe are next to me. I've been following some functions of the internal auditing sectors. I really like this profession because the internal auditors directly at the professional development of their employees. And there's this magazine of the internal auditing cover page. It says that internal auditing is the insurance of internal quality and trust. And I think the relationship has been defined very well. So from this onwards, what can you say about the functions and tasks of the Institute of Internal Auditing? Yes, thank you very much. I'd like to thank the invitation. I'd like to thank for the invitation. And I'll give some brief information with respect to the Institute of Internal Auditing. In 1995, our auditing institute and association was founded. I'm one of the founder member to this association. We have 3,000 members, and almost 860 of them are from banking and financial sector. So for that reason, we are not very much away from being the driving force of capital market boards. And you asked the same question to other panelists. I guess you have just bypassed me, but I just want to answer to that question as well. So in the past, with the public institutions, we had certain legal implementation, consultancy, advisory relationship. We exchange information with the public side when this certain laws were drafted, because we are a member to IAC, European Confederation's Turkish pillar is our institute, and IAA has more than 270,000 members. It's the umbrella structure of the internal auditing. So we are actually following what is going on domestically in Turkey, and we are also following the good practices in the world. And you can also think that as some publication screenings and also some feedback that our members learn and bring us after they take part in certain conferences or congresses. So mainly we work for training and education. We try to improve and enhance the competencies of our members. We have this collaboration and cooperation with our members. And when it comes to corporate management and internal auditing, yes, there is this relationship, and or else the effect of internal auditing over corporate management. Actually, these two should not be separated from one another, since when you talk about corporate government, corporate management, but if you take steps for betterment of corporate management, like the definition of the tasks and roles and preparation of the risk modules in the company and establishing the inner control system, defining the responsibilities, if you talk about them, then you need to understand whether they really work or not. if they work, whether they are in line with the standards or not, you have to be rest assured. So from an independent employee, from an independent institution, you have to be given this assurance. You need to get that approval. So we are the ones, internal auditors are the ones who could provide that assurance. And there is this great relationship between corporate management and internal auditing, and internal auditing can provide this insurance. It's not only about activities about the companies, but also further steps and also potential strategies, investments of the company in each and every area. Internal auditors can audit the company. It's assuming both auditing and assuring responsibilities. We have to also remember this. This is a question to everyone. That's why I have not specified this question to you. I was not trying to bypass you. And here, of course, we're trying to create a reasonable trust environment for corporate management, and internal auditors are the maybe safeguard for this. And the Turkish Association of Appraisers has done their activities for the last 2 decades for the same purpose. Maybe we are in different specialty areas, maybe in different professional groups. We are serving for the main purpose. We have our vice chairperson of Associated of Listed Companies and some other titles. Also, you have many titles, so I don't know which with which I need to call you. So how can you evaluate NGOs and their influence over capital market boards as the vice chairperson of Association of Listed Companies? And what are your recommendations for capital markets boards so that they will be at better positions in the future? Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank our audience and participants for watching us at the very late hours of the day. I'm from Association of Listed Companies. In capital market boards, there are different institutions, and there are some portfolio management companies and appraisers companies, and we are the representative of the listed companies in the Istanbul Stock Exchange. We are the association for them. So one of our main goals is to manage the relation between legal authorities and our members smoothly. Do we have some problems? Yes, we do. Very briefly, I'll touch upon them, and after that, I'll talk about certain recommendations for betterment of capital markets board. So first and foremost, and if you want to be accepted on the eye of the legal authorities, you have to represent majority of the sector. Otherwise, you will not be accepted or accepted as addressee. And also, you need to have certain knowledge and information about your sector. Afterwards, some legal authorities can accept you and ask you certain questions. So in the very beginning, for instance, before they make some legal regulations, they can ask you your opinions, or else if there is a draft legislation, they can ask your opinions about this legislation. But one of the biggest problems in this relations, as Tamer has mentioned, this is not a systemic relationship. This is a non-official relationship, because an institution's department person might be in close contact with you, and they're asking questions to you about the legislations. But the same same institutions, department X, responsible person B, for instance, might not listen to you. Of course, among our members, we might have certain problems, but the real issue is to disseminate solutions about the overall problems of the sector. But sometimes one company has their own problems, and they think that it's the general problem of the sector. So I think we need much more qualified and trained employees of the companies. If it's not the real sectoral problem, it should not be communicated to the legal authorities as if they are the real sectoral problems. These are the common problems that we are encountering with. And when it comes to the enhancement of the capital markets board, so where we are, what is the situation right now? And when we have a look at capital markets board, they say that it's not very important in the financial sector, but of course it's not the case. Its share in the financing system increasing day by day. If we talk about its own developments in the very beginning of 1980s, Capital Markets Board was initiated. Actually, it goes back to even a century ago, but the first establishment was 1980s. Then 1985, stock exchange was activated, and after these processes, I think there were two important cornerstones. One of them was in the first half of 1990s. Foreign investors were invited to Turkey, and also the assets were made possible for sales and procurement. After that, foreigners then were coming to Turkey. And also our Capital Markets Board were just based on single things. It was all about shares. But as of 2000s, after elimination of the high risk environment, high interest environment, bonds were made available. It's one of the important developments, I think. And also derivative processes, transactions market was opened. It was firstly opened in Izmir, then Istanbul branch was opened. And also there was another option for transaction due date, and also fund industry developed free funds, and also insured funds, and also joint venture capital bonds were available. And with the internal corporate investor base enlargement, we can say that from this onwards, Capital Markets Board, in terms of products and service, we are very much strong to compete against other markets. We almost have everything. We don't have many shortcomings, but of course we can do many more things. We have still certain shortcomings. For instance, a retreating withdrawal of the foreign corporate companies. I think it has led to many problems in the second stage. If we have time, we can talk about this in more details. And secondly, we have already positioned this place as a regional finance center. Unfortunately, we haven't taken any step for this purpose. So maybe in the future perspective, we have to define these two as main targets. And our union has organized this Congress. I think maybe we have to see this as a great step towards being a financial center. Thank you very much. You have wrapped it up very well. Thank you very much. You have already summarized this development step by step. We have seen everything. And here I am the representative of the Ethics and Reputation Society. I'd like to mention this. We have 200 corporate members. And on top of these implementations, we try to emphasize on the ethics and reputation. And there is this legal harmonization compliance processes when this insurance is given. How to implement this legal compliance processes. We are following the trends in the world, and we try to introduce those trends to Turkey. You have wrapped it up very well, and we try to make it work for the development of the Capital Markets Board. I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Yaşar Bahçeci from the Turkish Association of Appraisals. It's very late hours of the day for real estate, because it's all interesting for us. What do you think about the future of the real estate sector? How do you evaluate it as of this moment? And what will be the role of real estate for our lives? What can you say?
Oh, yes, of course. Well, they are actually confusing us with the real estate consultants. The only thing that we are not obliged to do is real estate issues. So we are actually, it is forbidden for us to do it. So it's a locomotive sector, what we do now. Suppose there are 250 units where people are actually related to. It's very much important in order to actually create employment and also economics. Of course, we are definitely bounded to it. The more the trade is increasing, the more valuation occurs. We were talking about ethics. We're talking about institutionalization, and there are plenty of mechanisms that we have to actually collaborate with. Unfortunately, the way that the private sector is checking out is just to save the day, to profit, for instance, in order to do profit. Some certain ethical rules and regulations are taken as a second step. So this is actually that we are facing as a business, and the real estate sector, on the other hand, is very much directly related with the economy. The more the economy is vivid, the more the real estate is also going to be vivid. So when the prices rise, for instance, doesn't necessarily mean that there is a great amount of an actual vitality there, but it can be sometimes contrary as well due to the pandemic situation. And due to the fact that the materials are rising, and due to the fact that labor is also rising, some certain supplies are also increasing. And that's the reason why we are actually right now in such a verge that we are facing certain problems. And our country is an attractive country, of course. Indeed, foreign citizens do actually have a demand to buy real estate in our country as well. There are approximately 50,000, 60,000 real estates that have been purchased by foreign citizens. Of course, 25-30% of them are those, but are bought by those who intend to receive to have a citizenship, a Turkish citizenship. And there is also such an actual demand as such, but there is actually a great amount of a deal going on there too. But on the other hand, a future projection and our future vision has to be definitely very well understood. So today we have this Congress, and tomorrow will be we have another day for this of this Congress. But the problems of valuation sector can also been handled, because there are certain problems, and what can we face in the future as a sector. It seems to be that everybody wants to be a trustworthy country, but on the other hand, they want to actually also write down the necessary value that they want to. Sometimes it's a low value, sometimes it's a high value, depending on the situation. But according to the international evaluation standards, we have to abide by those rules. If not, we do not have then an international value at all. And on the if you want to have a place in the global world, then you need to abide by some certain standards, and the valuation is also one of it. And I always say that in a country that is trustworthy, where valuation is proper, is definitely making people more confident to make a purchase. But unfortunately, in the private sector, it happens to be that in some certain areas there are no importance for them of the reputation of the country. They just want to, they have the greed to actually sell the real estate with a higher price. And that's the reason why the valuation sector is always under attack. And I also would, there are very important institutions that are actually supporting us in this manner. Hence the case, there are very important studies that have been done. For instance, the Ministry of Environment and Environment is supporting us in that manner. Those who are actually raising the wall in that manner. That's the reason why it is necessary that we have to be in collaboration with these institutions. We have to think long term. On a long term, how can we rise the economy of Turkey? How can we actually make people want to buy from Turkey? Unfortunately, I have to say that in some certain cases, we are running away from the negotiation platforms. If there is a problem, we need to find a solution for this as well, so that everybody is actually working at the same manner. But sometimes it happens to be that people do not want to undertake any kind of a responsibility and just run away And there are institutions as such as well. This is not a good approach indeed. And today we are talking about the NGOs, and they are all complementary as elements. If we just think about the state, when the state, of course, there is a very serious state tradition, and NGOs, on the other hand, are definitely helping each other. So those who are in the NGOs can work in the private sector, and private sector can pass on to the state sector, public sector, etc. It's very nice. On the other hand, it's very much important to have a different point of view in that manner. But in the valuation sector, the valuation sector, of course, their experts are facing certain problems, but we are all at the same side. We want our we want our country, our state to develop. We want our democracy to develop. We want to become more institutionalized. We want to have institutions that are abiding by the rules of ethics. And for that, I believe that we need to increase the solidarity that we have. Institutionalization is indeed very much important. And I suppose you have already declared that, unfortunately, when the person and the top is changing, everything changes. But we shouldn't actually abide. If the person changes at the top, the company, the institution has to go on working as it has to be, and not according to the boss or the CEO that has changed. So if everybody can do this, then I believe that all of us can come to a conclusion, and we can be successful. A good qualified human resources have to be involved in this indeed. And this is how we are developing ourselves. It's how we are actually proceeding. We want to be in collaboration with all the NGOs, and our doors are open for that. And such congresses and such summits, symposiums are very much important. But we need to come have results at the end of the day. And so what we do here in the meetings, we need to take also results, and we need to implement the decisions that we have. How can we solve the problems? What are the related institutions or the companies? Are areas of fields that we need to start tackling about? And I also would like to get your opinion, Mr. Yashar. In the last part, let us talk about this a little bit. Of course, we want to develop our capitals indeed, and we want to have foreign investors as well. We have also a target in which we want to be actually a hub of investment indeed. But we're constantly talking about institutionalization of estimation, prediction, and on the other hand, of course, of trustworthiness. Mr. Yashar, Mr. Bülent Yurdalan, I would like to ask a question on how we can actually create that environment and how we can do this internal auditing about this. And let me just tell you, the scandals, the worst financial scandals. There are so many scandals going on in the world, and how it happened. Just take a look at it. What are the reasons behind? What happened? Who were involved in the company within the framework of these scandals? Enron was another scandal. WorldCom was another scandal, and two Greek senators have made a law, and that law was about the evaluation and investigation of the finances. So the auditing of the finances, for instance. So weren't all these actually don't you? You might be thinking that the audits were already been made, but no, they weren't made. With an independent auditing companies, we have seen that the chairpersons were actually working together in Enron's case. So when we come to the strengthening of the capital markets, first and foremost, our companies have to be regarded as with a trustworthy point of view. So that is the reason why we need to have an institutional management. We need to have a certain amount of a branding, and the internal and external auditing has to be done accordingly to the financials, the operations, the transactions, the products, and the continuity of the operations and the independency of the board of managers and the decisions given by the board of members that are proper for good practices are very much important. That is the reason why we need to come to an independent result, and we need to report it as an audit company. So the investor only then can make an investment who has such a quality. What I mean about quality is that the financials are audited, that there are no problems, administrative problems about the managers, for instance, and where the responsibilities are separated within the company, and all activities in the companies are documented, and all the flows of the documents are transparent, are very much important for an investor. Independent from the management, independent from the people is very much important indeed. So a company who has these qualities, of course, and there will be no problem at all for an investor. And you can an internal audit for this, and also an external audit that is approving it is very much important. But we are not only talking about finances. Of course, all the workflow has to be followed up and monitored, and they have to be audited as well. And such a company's bond, indeed, will be trustworthy for an investor, because on the medium and long term, they will know that the company is going to develop and then is going to enter into new markets, and with a better, they can actually act on more precise prices and more fair prices. So this is the reason why institutionalization in that manner is very much important. The positive aspect of institutionalization can convert into a certain amount of evaluation. And that's the reason why the investor definitely would actually invest it and can be a shareholder here. And hence the case, this is how I can actually briefly summarize on how to do things in this manner. Thank you very much.
Olması gerekenleri çok güzel saydı. Bunların hepsi vallahi var bizde demekle de olmuyor. Bunları bir denetim.
Thank you very much. With an internal auditing system, those things should be also proven with an international standardization system. Tamer Sagam, esteemed president of the corporate governance, what can you say about Turkey? And in terms of international capital, international investment, you have already given a great example, but in your corporate governance, what are the expectations? Yes. Yuray Bey, first and foremost, when we talk about corporate governance concepts, it's not a new concept. As of the very beginning of the companies, corporate management, corporate governance have always been the case. But as of its current meaning, we can talk about a decade or 2 decades, for this management. Like it has been previously mentioned, certain corruptions could also happen, and the investors interest over the capital markets decreased, and very strict regulations were applied. And this is where we are right now. This is how I think corporate management must be defined under two different titles. One of them is the structural one. The other one is the behavioral. I mean, what I mean by this, these two definitions. One of them is related to decisions about the structure, how to apply it, what to do. But when it comes to behavioral aspect, it is the practicality of this mentality over the company's management. So when the doors are closed on the executive boards, when we are with the people, at the decisions that are taken when it comes to principality of the corporate management, being fair, transparent, accountable, and honest and fair, to what extent these are internalized by the people? This is a real issue. For that reason, in Turkey, in terms of this behavioral approach, there are not many developments. On the contrary, the structural development, we are not a very advanced stage, and we can see the results of it. Maybe 20 years ago, Turkey's private sector had certain challenges in terms of accessing the capital. There was no accumulation of capital in Turkey, and in the world, Turkish private sector couldn't improve, couldn't grow. The lack of capital was a determining factor. However, in the last 5 years, 10 years, there's been a great movement of capital. Each and every year, $2 billion of capital is actually going around. But Turkey's private sector can't get the big share of this circulating amount per its own size, unfortunately. And when we compare it with other countries, like developing countries, they have become they have their own global brands. For instance, a Brazilian capital fund manages a huge investment, which is 2/3 of Turkish GDP. So this magnitude is not something coincidence. This is not something happening by chance. I think corporate governance is something beyond than our own awareness. It has huge influence over economic order in Turkey for future and even for today. Corporate governance, corporate management principles should be adopted. If it is made, private sector in Turkey, I believe it's something indispensable for the growth of capital markets board as well. There are certain changes on the legislation, legal developments. They could be better. Of course, we can talk about the real shape procedure, but at the very basis, if we can't solve corporate management issues, the things that I've mentioned before, and if we can't take any further steps towards behavioral changes, it will just be nothing actually, and we don't have any chance to growth. And I like to conclude my speech in this way. When we talk about corporate governance, it's not only about companies, it's not only about private sector representatives. NGOs can also be included in this scope, and even state could be involved in this scope, because the state and the private sector, these are all affected by the economic definitions, and financial institutions' ratings can't outperform the state's rating. No matter how good you are, the environment you are in will be limiting. In Turkey, corporate governance is the same. No matter what we do for private sector management, at the very basis, if we can't solve the behavioral changes as Turkey, by the way, this is what we are discussing at the core of these discussions, even though we don't name it, there lies corporate governance. For that reason, as Turkish Corporate Governance Association, our most important priority over the next periods is to prioritize corporate governance issue in each and every field of our lives, emphasize it, and once again explain the reality of corporate governance. This is what we will do. I'd like to say a few words, if you allow me. Can you please think about this? How many companies in Turkey having more than a century history? I can remember a few companies, that's it. So one of the basic problems here is that there should be systems independent of the individuals. There should be the mission and the philosophy of the company's establishment. And we are talking about something which can hand it over to other generations' future. We're thinking and talking about these issue when Tamer also mentioned behavioral approaches. I think it's very much referring to that. So yes, okay. I mean, main capital owner can die and his son can die as well. So, but or leave the company. But if you just settle that on the company, it will continue as a brand. And I'll give you example. South Korean POSCO company, steel company, iron and steel company. Just check this before, please, because how many people are managing this company? You can understand the real approach towards corporate governance can be understood. And I'll give the floor to Ilhami. We've discussed some common goals, and I think we made a great deal of self-criticism. If it just stays on the appearance, you can't get the benefit that you'd like to get. For instance, if internal auditing can be made sincerely, I think it's going to be much more beneficial. We carried out some research as NGOs. So when it comes to corporate institutionalization, when the processes are really happening, it happens when there's acquisition or merging or something about procurement. There should be a triggering point. And when there's something like that, it can be made. It's something doable, feasible. But there are certain companies who don't have such visions. I wish that there will be companies growing and representing our country in other countries. So what should we do under the umbrella of Capital Markets Board to maybe make this culture more settled? Credit rating institutions, can they do something more? And as NGOs, in what aspects, how can we serve this? I think it's a very big title. It's a very big question, but okay, thank you very much. Let me answer in this way. Tamer has mentioned internalization is very crucial. Many companies are member to independent management boards, or maybe just out of obligation, they create this obligatory independent boards, but the members of the board are their families or neighbors or friends. But if it is established and applied correctly, it will continue because people will see the results. If these things are settled once, they are not going to be given up on, because once you settle it, you will see the practical benefits. We, of course, criticize ourselves, but let's have a retrospective look at the history. I think we have come a long way. We started with the regulations on the Capital Markets Board. It was the push sent by the Capital Markets Board. It was on voluntary basis, and it was made obligatory with the OECD's regulations, but the ones who made it once would accept it and continue. There is this expropriation too much, and many of them are SMEs. When they are entering to Capital Markets Board, they know that they're going to be subjected to these regulations, and they come in advance. Just they know it. Many companies are not open to public, and they don't want to be open to public, but they still implement it. And new listed companies, they really believe in that. So I'm not that pessimistic. But I agree with Tamer's opinions. I think it should also be owned by public institutions, public companies, all the structure of the public, because public has its own world. I think this should also be felt by public institutions. For us, like you mentioned, it's not about being open to public. Maybe for the adapting instruments in the financing banking sector, we should be seeing that push as well. And the banking sector, some companies are not very fast. So they check also the management and also the internal structure of the companies. They take their own scoring system to consideration. I think there is big development when I compare Turkey with other countries. For instance, when it comes to board members, there are some Western countries who are not as advanced as us. So I think we are at a good position. Thank you very much. We have come to the our panel. Yes, we not in the minutes, but in the seconds. So it's I really enjoyed this panel. I really like to thank you very much, Yaşar Bahçeci, the head of Turkish Appraisers Association, Tamer Sakam. Thank you very much, Corporate Management Association of Turkey, and the Association of the Listed Companies to the Stock Exchange, Vice President, and Turkish Association of Internal Auditing. I'd like to thank you very much. And I also like to thank you for coming here as the head of the Ethics and Reputation Association of Turkey. I wish we're going to have stronger capital markets board and we will have a successful future. On the road, there will be many barriers, but the NGOs are the driving force, are the drivers, and to the best we can do with our experience and knowledge, we'll be supporting and endorsing these processes. I hope we will also be welcoming these bright days all together in the future. Thank you very much. Once again, we'd like to thank the Union of the Turkish Capital Markets Board. Thank you very much and good evening.